I realized that I was trying to solve an inner problem by fixing the outside. I was trying to keep my house clean. I was trying to lose the weight and diet and, control my body, control my house, control my kids and my husband. And which all these things, as we know, I mean, really, we cannot control these things truly. We have control over our choice, our voice, what's inside of us.
Living a healthy, balanced life is no small feat, especially when you're a mom. With meals to cook, laundry to load, work to do, and humans to raise, it can be easy to feel like we're in an on-again, off-again relationship with healthy living. But it doesn't have to feel this way. I believe living a healthy life has become way too complicated. What we need isn't a new plan or program telling us what to eat or how to live. We need simple, uncomplicated routines and information that's going to help us live our best, most beautiful life without rules and restrictions. Join me, Kristin Dovbniak, holistic health coach, certified intuitive eating counselor, and mama of two, for weekly conversations on what it means to live a healthy, balanced life, uncomplicate eating, and simplify in every area of mom life. Hey friends, welcome back to the Healthy Balanced Mama podcast. Kristin here. We are a couple weeks into the school year now, and whether you are homeschooling like we are, or you are jumping back into public school, whatever that looks like for you in your area, it is certainly a season of transition. And I think in seasons of transition, at least for myself, it can take some time for us to sort of find our groove and figure out what our days look like, or how we want our days to look, and what it looks like to live the life that we want to live. So earlier this year, I connected with Sarah Dalton. She's the founder of A Simply Big Life, which is an online community that empowers women to design every day with intention. And I was actually on Sarah's podcast back in June, right at the end of June, and I'll link that episode in the show notes, of course. But I immediately connected with Sarah and her message for helping women live each day with intention, design their days, live according to their own core values. Everything she talks about is so in alignment with what I talk about. Of course, I talk about it in terms of simplifying nutrition and food and tuning into our intuition in that way, but she talks about it when it comes to our whole lives, our schedules, living our days with intention, living the life that we want to live, starting by simplifying. And so I knew that once I connected with her, I wanted to have her on to share her method with you, to share her Simply Big Life planner she has that really helps you to do exactly what she's going to share with you in today's episode. So we talk about simplifying. We talk about discovering your core values. We talk about learning how to manage your energy. We talk about how to get the whole family involved when it comes to figuring out what your essentials are for your days and really learning how to live your whole life aligned with the life that you want to live, the values that you have, and being able to really put that into practice to find peace and productivity together. Yes, it is possible, and she will share with you how, and really creating these, simplified systems and routines to allow ourselves to make all these things happen without it feeling crazy stressful. So this episode is just jam-packed full of really awesome, actionable advice. So I recommend you grabbing a notebook and a pen while you listen. If you're listening in the car, this might be something that you want to go back and listen to later, or grab one of her Simply Big Life planners. She's not sponsoring me. I just really love it because she really does take you through step by step. So I can't wait for you to hear her message and her tips in this episode. So a little bit more about Sarah. Like I mentioned, she's the founder of A Simply Big Life, an online community that empowers women to design every day with intention. Through her coaching programs, as well as the Simply Big Life Planner, she helps women to align each day with their values. Sarah's philosophy is that we are holistic beings, and when talking about productivity, it's imperative to address the whole person. From mindset shifts and energy management to simplified systems and more, her mission is to help women to stop living in survival mode and start thriving. She's also the host of the Your Simply Big Life podcast, where she has weekly conversations with like-minded women and offers inspiration on all things simplifying and living an intentional life. Pulling from her own life experience, Sarah is passionate about helping women learn to find their unique balance with both peace and productivity. Yes, it is as amazing as it sounds. I can't wait for you to hear our conversation, so let's dig in. Hey, Sarah, welcome to the Healthy Balance Mama podcast. I am so excited to have you on.
Hi, Kristin. Thanks so much for having me.
I think we are going to have such a great conversation that is going to be so relatable to pretty much everyone. I'm sure everyone who listens in, but I love to start with just a little icebreaker. I know we've already been chatting for a couple minutes, but just to break the ice and get things going, what do you drink first thing in the morning when you wake up?
Okay, yeah. So I have been listening to your podcast for a while now, and I love this question. I love hearing what everybody drinks first thing. For me, it is I try to do the water, and I will usually fill up my glass of water and drink about half of it, but I get too excited about the coffee, so I usually don't finish it. But my husband is amazing. So we've gotten into a good rhythm where he will set the coffee and there will be a full pot of coffee waiting for me. And I'll grab my favorite mug. And it's very much like a ritual and a way for me to ease into my day. So after that, half a glass usually of water, I'm trying to make it enjoyable, but it's usually just so I can get to the coffee. I will fill that mug with hot black coffee, and just literally as I'm drinking it, I will say, this is going to be a good day. Like, that's how I start the day.
Oh, I love that. A little mantra with your coffee.
Yes.
It's going to be a good day. Oh, I love that so much. And I'm with you. I make this giant mason jar of lemon water in the morning, and I drink it's about 4 cups of water, and I drink probably 2 cups of it before. And that's kind of my goal. I'm like, if I drink half of this big mason jar, then I'm good. Yes. Then I have my coffee. Then I drink the other half after. So I'm still drinking my water. So we're hydrating first, but I mean, that coffee, it really does. It starts my morning off too.
It does. It does. Yeah. We were actually just on vacation, and I realized how set in my ways I am with having my coffee basically first thing. And there was no coffee maker in the hotel room. Oh, no. So I had to get dressed, first world problems, obviously, but get dressed, walk down the hall, wait in line. And it was like, they weren't open till 7. It was this whole thing. So it made me all the more grateful for my morning coffee in my house when I want it.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love that. I actually stayed at a hotel for a conference last year with a couple of friends, and one of them brought a coffee maker with her to make sure that we had coffee. And I'm like, yes, you are awesome.
Brilliant.
So great.
Yes.
So I would love if we can start to dig in to you. And for those of my listeners who might not know you yet, what are you passionate about bringing to the world?
Yes, I love this question too. So I'll just back it up a little bit and kind of where Simply Big Life kind of came from in the first place. So my oldest son is 8. So about 8 years ago, I became a wife, a stepmom, and a new mom, basically all in 1 year, on the same year. So it was a lot, and it kind of put me into this zone of overwhelm and reaction mode, just living in this place of, some people might call it a hot mess. Some people might call it, whatever you want to call it. But it was definitely living in this place of constantly just putting out the next fire, running around, feeling like I could never get caught up. Like I was always just behind, going to bed at the end of the night and really trying to figure out what the heck just happened. Like, what did I actually accomplish? It just felt like no real meaning other than, I was taking care of my family, which is meaningful and important, but it felt like, yeah, there was something missing. So there was that kind of this underlying feeling of like, because I always wanted to be a mom too. Like this was my dream and I was living my dream, but why wasn't I feeling fulfilled? Like, why was there still that feeling of like something's missing? So ultimately, after a while, I realized that I was trying to solve an inner problem by fixing the outside. I was trying to keep my house clean. I was trying to lose the weight and diet and, control my body, control my house, control my kids and my husband, and which all these things, as we know, I mean, really, we cannot control these things, truly. We have control over our choice, our voice, what's inside of us. And that's what I feel like I did not know in the beginning, and that's where I was feeling so lost. And once I kind of switched that, I was able to really start down this path of true kind of that personal development path and figuring out who I was, what I wanted, and where I wanted to go. And that was the turning point for me. And I hired a coach. She was really like a life and business coach. I felt like there was always an entrepreneur spark in me, like something, that I wanted to do something else with my brain. I didn't know what that was. But she really helped me to dig in and to kind of figure out what the next steps were. And ultimately, it started Simply Big Life at this point, started because I always loved planners, and I loved planning, writing lists, all the things, and I tried all the different planners. That was part of what I see now looking back. I was looking for the perfect planner. I was looking for the perfect solution to all my problems, which would be fixed right in the most beautiful like planner, and I could figure it all out and map out everything, which is not the case. But I went about and I wanted to create my own because I could not find what I was looking for out there. So ultimately, this really helped me to it just led to so many different things. And it started out just in a sketchbook, mapping out what I would want in a planner. It led to creating, a website, a coaching, like women through this process of, productivity and the method of Simply Big Life. And it kind of just evolved from there.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think that, and ultimately, I guess at this point now, what I'm passionate about bringing to the world and helping women to realize that it's an inside job, happiness, all those things that we need to connect back to ourselves, and that it's not all these outside things that are gonna fulfill us, and ultimately just we get there through simplifying. We do that we connect to ourselves when it's not so noisy and the clutter is clear and we can hear our own voice. That's how we get there. So I love to help women figure that out.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love your message so much. And I am sure that there are so many women nodding along with that experience, whether they've been there before or they're there right now with that experience you had kind of as a young mom and a new stepmom and all of the things going, this was my dream. And, I love my family, but I don't even know. What did you say at the end of the day? You're like, what even happened? I
Yeah.
think that we often go through our lives, and we go through them so fast we don't even realize what is
Yes.
happening, or we might not even realize that we're feeling a bit lost.
Right.
And it's that, like, that moment where you're like, oh my gosh, I am living my dream, but it doesn't feel like a dream. So I love that your mission is to help women simplify so they can get back to that core of themselves, which I think is
Yeah.
so cool. So I want to start by talking about this whole concept of simplifying, because that I am all about simplifying
Yep.
nutrition. So why is, you talked about your planner and that how that kind of, stemmed from all of these other things that you're doing with women now. So why is simplicity in our schedules and in our calendars so important? So what encouragement, I guess, do you
Mhm.
have for the mom who's in that place you were, who feels like simplicity is just not possible for her?
Yep. Yes. Oh my goodness. Yeah. I feel like I could talk about this forever. But I was able to kind of, I feel like, narrow it down to really what the benefits of simplicity. First of all, it's that clarity. So when you simplify, you're really getting rid of the non-essentials, right? And you're able to zero in on what it is that's important to you, who you are, and what you want out of life. And ultimately, I think, right, we get so caught up in the shoulds and all the things that we feel like we should be doing. Again, it's that outside noise and that outside influence where we're really allowing other people to decide what we do and what we're focusing on. So when you simplify, really it's getting down to the basics and getting that clarity of what is truly important. And I know we'll talk about core values later, but that's really where it all started for me, and that clarity of what's important. And then when you simplify, it really helps you to focus. You go deep instead of going wide, and just checking the things off the list, that infamous, in quotes, right, that to-do list that people either love or hate, like, but I feel like ultimately, really, when you simplify, you're getting down again to the basics. And when you're focusing on what's truly important, whether that's what's my focus for this week, what's my focus for today, and what's my focus in this moment. Like right now, I am here with you. I am not trying to do a million other things or think about anything else. I'm focusing, I'm going deep, I'm in this conversation. So when you simplify, you're able to go deep and get the quality. So it's not about the quantity or the number of things you check off in a day, because that was me. I checked off a bunch of things off my to-do list and went to bed feeling unfulfilled. But on these days, now I know the difference, because it's not like I'm perfect. I still have those days where I get confused in my brain and I'm like, no, but I want to do all the things. But those are the days when I don't feel as good. I mean, honestly, right? It's like truly the days where I feel the most accomplished is when I've been able to focus on one or two key things and really go deep and do them well. So that is really, I think, just how simplicity in our schedules and our calendars can help us with the clarity and the focus. And to that mom who feels like, but Sarah, I have so many things going on. Like that's great for you. But I am super busy and I don't even, right, like you're almost too busy to stop and think about these things and like map it out. Like, what would that look like for you? So ultimately, that's why I love to talk about too, just mindset. And it's mindset really first. And it's really thinking about like, what are the beliefs you have around your time? What are the beliefs you have around just really the things that you're doing in your day? What is filling up your time? And do you have this lack mindset when it comes to time? Like there's never enough time. Do you feel like you're saying that to yourself? I never have enough hours in the day. There's never enough time to do what I actually want. I can't imagine having an hour for myself to go on a walk or, to journal about these things that I want to figure out. Like, it's just truly, it's looking at those beliefs, I would say, is the first thing when you're trying to figure out how can you simplify when you're already overwhelmed. And then just letting go of that all or nothing thinking. I know you talk about that, and I think that applies here, right? That I'm going to go all in and I have to figure this all out now. And it's so black and white, like, okay, I'm just not going to do anything because there's too much to figure out. But what if you just let go of that? And what if you just do the next thing, one small thing each day to simplify, and start seeing how that affects your mood, how that affects, the way you're reacting to your kids and you're interacting with your husband. Then you gain that momentum. I know that it's, said over and over again, that journey of 1,000 steps, it truly starts with the first step. So I would say if if just one practical way that you could take that first step is looking at your calendar, looking at your schedule. Now that we're getting out of, kind of the different restrictions, they're like getting a little bit looser. I do think people are going to start to see, right, that our calendars are going to start filling up again. And what do we want to fill them with? That's a whole other thing. It's just being intentional, right? But ultimately looking right now where you're at, and what's one thing you can delegate to somebody else? Because as women, right, it is so stinking hard to ask for help. Some people, it might be easier than others, but I actually thought that I was somebody who it wasn't hard for me, that I'm okay with that. But I realized it's the things that I feel like are valuable, that are important to me, that I don't ask for help with because I want to do them my way. Right. But even those things, whether it's with the house, or whatever it is, if you just, whatever you feel like could really ease that burden and free up some space for you, I would challenge you to do that, to ask for help in one small way today or this week. And that can be your first step of saying, okay, that's off my plate. That's simplifying. So, and then you get a little bit like that adrenaline rush, addicted to simplifying. Like, what else can I do? What else can I simplify?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love this idea of delegation to something my husband and I did recently. And it almost feels like almost like bougie to admit, but
Right.
it's not, and we are not that fancy. But my husband and I both own our own businesses, and his business gets really crazy in the summertime and the early fall. And this year, everything's kind of gotten pushed quite a bit because of all of the COVID stuff. And so his season that was a lot more extended is now a lot more condensed, and it's made our lives very busy. And
Wow,
something that both of us were having a hard time, and it caused some arguments in our family trying to keep up with, is just the house. Just making sure that, the house is clean. We could deal with making sure the laundry was done most of the time and getting dinner on the table, but actually keeping the house fairly clean was getting kind of hard. And so we're like, you know what? Let's get someone to come in a couple times a month and do a deep clean in our house.
Yes.
And it feels so fancy, but it's not. It's within our budget. It's nothing crazy. We don't have a housekeeper that cleans our house every single day, but twice a month, we just leave the house for a couple hours and we come home and the house is clean and the kids destroy it like 3 hours later.
Right.
But it feels so good. And it has taken such a huge load off of our shoulders going, we're just going to keep up with the basic stuff. And we know that they're going to come and they're going to help us out with that. And it really has freed up so much, not just physical energy and space for our businesses and space for the kids and space to spend time with the family. We were spending half of our Saturdays cleaning the house because we didn't have any time during the week. And we're like, that's family time. What is more worth it to us? So we delegated that thing and that deep cleaning just a couple times a month. And we got that family time back, or that little, extra time my husband has to run out on a Saturday afternoon and do something for work. And then I can be with the kids. So it's one kind of like silly example in our family, but I am so with you on that with where can I let go of something? And that was a really important way for us to kind of simplify recently.
Absolutely. I love that. Yep.
Yeah. So something else that you talk about that I love, and I'm digging through, I am just currently obsessed with you and digging through everything that you have because I love this concept of simplifying in every area. And it's a journey that I've been on for a number of years now. But something that you talk about is designing our days with intention. And I love this concept because I think, just like you were talking about, I think so many of us go through our lives reactively, right?
Yep.
Instead of intentionally. So I think it's a really foreign concept for a lot of people to actually design our days. So how do we go about designing our days and with intentionality instead of kind of reacting to our days?
Yes. Oh, yes. Another thing, of course, I love to talk about. I actually I have the phrase live with intention tattooed right here on my body.
Oh, I love it.
So, and it really does help me every day I see it. I'm like, okay, center back. And to me, and again, I feel like it's something that people are throwing around a little bit, and that's great. Like, I think getting it out there, the more the merrier. And I think it can mean something different to each person. to me, again, yeah, it's really being proactive. It's taking the driver's seat in my own life. It's taking back ownership of my life. That, that phrase people say of that life's not happening to me, it's happening for me. All those things that, especially, oh my goodness, I had so many opportunities during these last few months to put that into practice with my own mindset of just, okay, how am I going to set my intention today to really keep designing my life and not letting the outside world determine what happens and how I feel, how I react. Just ultimately, to me, it's making the choice. It's taking back our power of choice in all the ways. So I love that, just the empowerment, and it's getting out of, it's a little bit of a challenge to get out of that victim mentality a little bit because ultimately what I realize is that I get why people do that, right? Or why I've done that, because it keeps you safe in that way of when it's not up to you, or when you feel like my hands are out of this, like it's just the world's doing this to me, then you don't have to maybe not fail, or however, right? Like it kind of takes that shame or that guilt out of it a little bit. But ultimately what I found is that personally, that's not me living my best life. Me living my best life, my 110% life, is when I take back control of the things that I do have control over, because obviously there are things, and it's kind of learning what that difference is too. What are the things that you truly do have control over? And usually that's just what's inside us. That's how we react. That's how we show up. And that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about designing our days, and designing our days with intention. So that's kind of that mindset piece, because I realized in everything I talk about, it's like first the mindset and then the practical. Like it's both. But first, let's get that mindset right. Like, because if you're kind of all over the place in what you believe, or, what has happened in the past that's holding you back, those things, then ultimately all the tools and all the tips aren't really going to work. And I think that's what, keeps a lot of people stuck. So ultimately, for me, I have found that it's really, again, it's getting proactive. And every single day, so first of all, every single week, I have in my planner, there's a weekly refresh. And every single week, you are reflecting on the week that just passed, what went well, what could have gone better, the wins, all the things, just reflecting. I think, again, we go, like you said, we're just moving so fast. Everything's happening so fast around us that we literally do not take the time to stop and think about what just happened, whether it's in the week, the day, the month. Like we all just had, or, we're we're still in it, but we're kind of coming on, it's on the heels of these months where I think we would all do really well to sit down and do some major reflecting. Like, what just happened? Like, what just happened? How did I respond? How, just the reflection and the getting quiet and the taking the time. That's really, I think, a really important piece of designing your days with intention, is the reflection piece of it. And then, so with the daily grounding, so you plan your week and you really get that on straight. But then every single day, I basically do the same thing. And I like to call it my daily grounding time. And ultimately, I'm learning too with the women that I, work with, that we're so different, that productivity and creating these different systems, there is no one size fits all. Just like, with food and all that, oh my gosh, like, and that's what I'm excited about. I literally get goosebumps, because what I want to do and what I want to help women do is customize all these things I'm talking about. Customize your weekly refresh, customize your daily grounding. What does that mean for you? What does that look like for you? How does that help you to go into your day feeling empowered, and like, what you're doing? What the intention is, how you want to feel. So all your actions throughout the day are going to line up and bring you back to your intention. So I like to do this grounding in the morning, just for obvious reasons, because when you do it first thing in the morning, ultimately that sets you up. But if you're not a morning person, right, figure it out. Maybe it's after breakfast, maybe it's, you know, a little bit later, but just yeah, really figuring out when that might work for you. But I feel like a daily grounding is kind of a non-negotiable in whatever way that looks like, because that is when I do my reflecting and my intention. So I literally map out, how do I want to feel today? But then I also, on even a more practical side, then I have in my daily, you know, it's the calendar. So I block out the things that I want to accomplish. So it's, how do I want to feel? And then what am I going to do that will help me to get there? So really that's designing our days with intention.
Yes. Oh my gosh. You can see me like nodding my head like a bobblehead doll over here going, yes. And I have been on and off, to be perfectly honest, with my own kind of daily grounding practice. I have some time in the morning where I do some journaling, some prayer. I try to do some meditation. So I have a little bit of time in the morning to myself that I have with my coffee. And I always go over my to-do list. And I try and do a to-do list at the beginning of the week. I kind of try and map out my week. But I'm slowly trying to get into this process that you've introduced me to of actually doing it every single day and doing that little kind of mini reflection. I have been trying to do kind of a weekly reflection for probably the last 6 months or so.
Mm-hmm.
Some weeks are better than others. I'm certainly not perfect. I love that I have the planner now that I have a place to do that every week. So I'll kind of plan out my week, but actually going in every day and doing that reflection and asking myself how I want to feel, what I want to accomplish, I think it's so powerful. And I think that, you know, it just comes back to how so many of us are just reacting to life and not, you know, and not actually living it with intention, but starting that. And I like that you're really flexible about it too, because you know, I'm all about flexibility.
Yep.
So, you know, figuring out what time actually works
Yes.
for you to do this. Same thing when I talk about, you know, joyful movement, doing exercise. You don't have to do it at a certain time of the day. It's just about doing it in a way that feels good. And I think it's the same with this. When does it work for you? It's really just about being intentional. And I think that really does. It compounds on itself. I know I feel so much better when I've done that kind of reflecting over the last week.
Mm-hmm.
I've got my schedule for the week, and then I kind of choose my essentials each day, the things that my must do's each and every day. And it makes such a difference. So 100% with you.
Yep.
So something that you mentioned before that I really want to dig more into is this idea of our core values. So this is something that I like to talk about when I talk about goal setting. Typically, I'll talk about goal setting maybe once a year, usually around the kind of the new year time with the women in my community. And it's something that I think a lot of the women that I talk to about, they've just never really sat down to consider. We might have kind of an idea in the back of our head, but I think, you know, with everything you've been talking about, not knowing those core values, not knowing what we value can be something that hinders us from living the life that we want to live, because, you know, we're just reacting and we are not, you know, living with intention because we don't actually know what our intentions are. So can you talk a little bit more about what core values are and how they relate to all of this, to designing our days, to living with intention, to simplifying?
Yes. Oh man. Whew. Okay. So this is honestly, this was what turned it all around for me when my coach introduced me to my core values. And I did the exercise of values clarification. Because again, like you said, I feel like when you say core values, like everybody has some sort of like a concept of what that is, like values. But I don't know that, you know, it would be an interesting, like, not game, but an interesting test to see, like, literally how many people could tell you their top 5 core values like that, right? And I know that that was me. Literally, when I felt that overwhelm, when I was living in this place of just constant, right, putting out the fires, I could not tell you. I could not. And it was eye-opening when I first did that exercise. And I was like, oh, and it took some time. Even it's really that inner work of like digging deep and to really figure out, for me, does this feel true? Because you go through, and I can give you that link to do a values clarification for your audience too. Cause I mean, I feel like that, I know that is where we start with all my coaching, everything. That's where we start to get that clarity. For me, it's family, faith, freedom, health, integrity. those are my 5 core values. And like I said, it really turned everything around once I just was aware of it. I feel like it starts with that awareness. Then I could, right, everything, it's like everything after that, it's like a domino. You're able to really start putting the pieces together. And like when I talk about intention, oh, it all goes back to my values. Oh, when I talk about my goals for the season, oh, what are my values? And okay, so just kind of digging in a little bit more, it's for me, my core values are the fundamental beliefs and the guiding principles for my life. So, and I like to say, so they're my foundation. Literally everything, like when you're talking about designing, you need a foundation to build on, right? So you're building your day around the foundation of your values. And they're my filter. So when I'm trying to discern, I think we talked about, right, essentials. What is essential? And a lot of people have trouble discerning and determining what are my essentials.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, that is always where I start, is with, okay, well, what are your values? And are the things you're doing throughout your day, are they aligned with your values? Or are they just killing time? Are they just really kind of fulfilling other people's values and not your own? So they're the foundation, the filter, and then ultimately they're your freedom, because they give you that freedom to just be you and to figure out who you are, and then to live your life with no apologies.
Mm-hmm.
This is who I am. And I'm not going to live, right, when you're in alignment, you're living in that space of freedom, because you're not trying to live somebody else's life. You're not allowing them to come in and tell you how it's done. You know who you are and what you want to do. So ultimately, I mean, yeah, I love values. Core values are the center and the foundation for me. And I think too, the other thing is just that people talk about, right? Are you in alignment? Are you, it can get a little bit like woo woo, or that feel like wishy-washy. Like, what does that mean? And I like to really dig down into it. I mean, I have a whole process with the coaching, the peace and productivity, that we could talk about more, but ultimately for you, when you're in alignment with your values, really try to figure out, what does that feel like in your life? What does that feel like in your body? What does that look like? How are you spending your days? But then also literally, like, I will tell you, for me, more so you can tell almost like when you're out of alignment. I know for me, I am breathing really shallow. I am not taking deep breaths. When something's off and I'm not feeling fully in alignment and I'm just feeling stressed out, running around, starting to get into that reactive mode, I literally go around the house sighing and I don't even realize it. My husband's like, "What are you like? Are you okay?" I'm like, "What?" He's like, "You're just sighing like like all day long." And I'm like, "Oh, like that's a sign to me something's a little bit off. Like I'm not fully in alignment with one of my values, or just in general, right? Like the day got off track somewhere." So that's a sign for me to like step back and be like, "Okay, let's look at this. Let's stop, pause, get quiet, all the things that simplicity, let's just simplify right now what's going on."
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, when I'm in alignment, it's that ease, it's that flow where you just feel energized and you're like, you end up getting a lot done, but you're not trying so hard. You're not forcing it. It's just kind of flowing, because ultimately it's in alignment. It's in that place of peace and where you thrive personally. So that's kind of my spiel on values and why I feel like it's so important to know them, right? And to just design around that.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah.
And I am over here again, just nodding along with you, going, I know that maybe, probably what are days and months now? I don't even know
Right.
when this is
So true.
happening. Like, we don't have days or
It's so
months
true.
anymore. They all flow into each
Oh my
other.
gosh.
But I want to say
Yeah.
probably, last year, maybe a little bit later in the year, almost about a year ago, I was really trying to realign some of the things in my life, in my business, in, the activities that we participated in as a family. We were doing a lot We were running around to all of the places, doing all of the things, and we were all stressed out. Like all of us, down to my 2-year-old, we were all
Oh,
stressed
yeah.
out. And I remember looking at my husband going, this isn't the life that I want to live. You know, we're doing these things that we think we should be doing, like you were
Yep.
saying
Yep.
before, but it's just too much. So we might like
Mhm.
each one of these individual things for the most part, but it just feels very heavy.
Yeah.
And that for us was a really good signal to go, okay, maybe we need to take a couple things off our plate. So when I realized, when I asked myself, and I went back to like, okay, so how do I really want to feel? And what are my actual values? I realized that we wanted more time as a family. So we let go of a couple of the extra activities that we had on our
Yeah.
schedule that just didn't make sense for us anymore. And it gave me a lot of freedom to say no to things, even though I felt I didn't want to
Yes.
disappoint people. So I hadn't said no to some things that I knew were the right time to say no. But it gave me that freedom to go, no, it's okay to say no. And it's
Yep.
sometimes okay to even, disappoint people sometimes when it's in alignment with your life and what is right for you. And this wasn't done in like a mean way at all. It was just like, yeah,
No.
this isn't right for us anymore. And letting go of a couple of those things and bringing in some more of those things that were important to us, like more family time, actually spending
Yes.
time together instead of just going every which way,
Yep.
and realigning our work schedules and things like that. It's been so powerful for me. So I'm so glad that you dug into that, and I'm just right along with you. With you can feel it when things are out of
Yes.
alignment, but I think
Yeah.
it's up to us to bring them back into alignment. No one's going to do
Right.
that for us. So I think that's a lot of what
Exactly.
you talk about, is that intentionality. You can recognize it, but then it's doing something about it from there. So
Absolutely.
something that you've talked about a couple times and I love, but also seems like it makes no sense, is having both peace and productivity. So those seem so opposite, I think, for many of us, and I know they have for me. For me, it's like if I'm productive, then I'm going, 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 and I'm never stopping. And if I'm peaceful, then I'm just not doing anything at all.
Oh,
So
yeah.
how can they coexist? How can you have peace and productivity? Because I want that.
Yes. It's so funny because I feel like I love how you just described it because I do feel like that's most people, right? And I even in the beginning, honestly, like now I feel like I am comfortable saying that I talk about productivity because I know what that means to me. I
Mhm.
think, ultimately, I think it might help if I just share how I view productivity, first of all. And that's really it's quality. It's focusing on quality, not quantity. It's focusing your energy on what is most valuable each day. For
Mhm.
me and for everybody, right? What is most valuable that day could be resting. It could be your family time. It could be spending time with your friends. It could be getting down and dirty with your to-do list and going to town because you have time and that's what will help you that day to feel most productive. But I think it's not only that, right? Like we have this like, again, the black and white. Productivity is getting more done, it's checking more off. But I'm like you with the food, like I'm in the gray. I'm over here hanging out in this messy middle of like, you know what, I value, again, back to the values, like my family is a top value, my faith, all these things. So they're going to come into play when I'm talking about I want to feel productive and really managing my energy. Again, we'll get into that too, but in the most productive way.
Mhm.
There are times at the end of the week it's not going to be productive to just keep sending emails and spitting things out, get like writing something else and producing something else. It gets to the point at the end of the week where producing one more thing is not going to be helpful for all of us.
Mhm.
That's really how we're wired ultimately. I mean, we're all going to have different levels of that and like capacities, but there is a point where we're not going to be able to produce this quality anymore. So
Mhm.
then what becomes most productive then is resting, renewing, recharging, and whatever that looks like for you. And that is usually whatever that is usually goes back to what you value. So then you find your productivity in your values
Yeah.
ultimately. And that is peace, right? It's that I think it's the balance, like you talk about, it's the harmony, it's really when you're able to lean into one thing one day and then lean into the next, lean into your work today, then lean into your family. And that's where that peace for me, that peaceful feeling, the flow, the ease, and I like how you said the lightness, like you said, like when you're out of alignment, it feels heavy. I feel
Yeah.
like then when you're in alignment, it's that lightness. Like you're not trudging around and feeling like, whoa, but you're energized and you're feeling light. And to me, that is peace. That's peaceful. So yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love that you were saying that producing doesn't always mean productive, because that really, it goes against like all of my nature. My nature
No.
is to just keep producing and producing and
Yeah.
producing. But what a good reminder that rest is productive, that refreshing and renewing is just
Yeah.
as productive as producing things, because we need that. We need
Yeah.
that in order to live a life that aligns with our values and
Yeah.
do the things that are most important. So, oh, I love that. And that does feel so much more peaceful and more
Right.
light when you remember that, when you remember that
Yeah.
rest and
Yeah.
refreshing can be just as productive. I love
Yeah.
that. So when this episode comes out, we are going to be kind of going into this back to school time. So I wonder what your advice is in terms of simplifying and finding this, concept of peace and productivity during changing seasons. So either back to school time or like any sort of transition in our lives. So for us, we are learning how to transition back into homeschooling. We homeschooled before, and then we were public school, and now we're going back into homeschooling.
Okay.
Being
Yeah.
two entrepreneurs, maybe someone else is navigating having a new baby, a new normal with school, with, whatever it might be in their lives. I think there's so many things that are
Yeah.
happening to
Yeah.
all of us. So how can they maybe bring simplicity into this kind of chaos of change?
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Because right, and I think that's the thing too, is right, the thing we can count on is that change is always going to happen. So we need, that's why too, the one size fits all, or I'm going to do this system forever, done, go, move on. But no, the seasons, I love thinking and talking about the different seasons. A season can be, like you said, like it can be just the physical, like, okay, we're moving into summer, we're moving into fall, but then it can just be a season, like we just came out of that challenging quarantine season that none of us saw coming, right? Like, or like you said, going back into um, homeschooling, like whatever it is. I think when we just get the basics down and we kind of know what works for us and for our family, then we're able to apply that framework to any new season that we go into. So something that I love to do, I love to talk about, and that's doing a brain dump. And that's literally just getting pen and paper, getting out anything and everything onto that paper that's running around in your brain when you're going into, I'll just kind of use that, like you're going into the school season, right? What are all the things you need to do to get your kids set up for school? Like literally the to-do list for that. What are you going to be your work hours? Now, like talking about for me, right? We're hopefully our kids are going to go back to school. It's looking like they will, but it'll obviously look a little different. Um, but then I think it's even more important for me to be intentional with my hours that like could easily slip by if I'm not intentional, right? So what are my work hours going to look like? Like all the things in your brain that are swarming around that you have to figure out going into this next season, do a brain dump. Like just get it all out. Set your timer, whether it's 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and just get in a quiet place and get it all out. That would be my first piece of advice, because then I think from there, you can kind of look at that and you're going to find a lot of things that stay up in our brain and affect our mental energy. They don't really matter. Like they're there and they're taking up space. And when you get it out on paper and like in a brain dump, you're able to really see like, okay, that's like, I don't need to be even worrying about that. But this thing over here, yes, I do need to figure this out. So this is something I need to focus on. And like we said before, I take that brain dump and I see what I can delegate. That's one of the first things. What can you delegate to somebody else, something else? What can you delete altogether? Like I said, too, like delete, like what does not matter? What are the shoulds that are crowding that, whether it's kids' activities, volunteering things that you've maybe done in the past, but for this season, they don't line up and they don't really work, but you feel obligated. There's got to be a way to, again, to have, and like, it's kind of like you touched on, but it's really boundaries. It's keeping those values secure so that you can stay in alignment and really protecting your family and what's important to you. And that's what boundaries do. So I think they get a bad rap, but ultimately, yeah, it's just keeping us feeling good. And so deleting, and then what can you, this is a big one too that I do like to talk about, and I feel like I'm still working on, but automating. What can you automate that's the routines, the rhythms, the things like meal planning, like we talked about when you are on my show, like just all the things. What are the things that you do on a regular basis that you can create a simple system, like 2 or 3 steps, like not these like complicated, overwhelming, like I'm not going to remember the system. What is a simple system that you can create to know when you're going to do your grocery shopping, to know how you're going to plan your meals each week? Because these are all things like we all need to eat dinner, right? We all feed our families. We all do the laundry. We all clean the house in one way or another, whether it's having somebody come in or doing it, or doing a combo, which I do. So I think ultimately, what can you automate? Yeah. What are the systems that you can create to just keep that flow going? The other thing that I really encourage is I do a weekly coffee chat with my husband. So once you're kind of, again, you yourself got all your ideas out on the page, and then you went through and you edited your brain dump. And then it's really important to get your husband and your family on the same page. In this new season, moving into this, where are we at? What are our values? What are our priorities? What's this going to look like? Because if your kids are over here thinking they're going to do 20 sports, and your husband is like, I'm going to go play golf. Not my husband doesn't even play golf, but, I'm going to do whatever over here. And you're like, I'm going to work and do all these things. It's like, whoa, we got to be on the same page. And so I like to do a weekly coffee chat, or even in each season, sit down and do a coffee chat with your husband. Look over the season, like tell him, share with him, this is what I have so far. What do you think about this? Or what are your thoughts, and then have a family meeting. So I usually like to do it myself, make the plan, or, get my thoughts clear with my husband, and then get the family on board. Like that's kind of the process. And then it comes down to, like we've said over and over again, what are the essentials for this season? Because I think we can carry over like, well, I focused on this, or this was important last season, but it's a new season. So what's going on? What makes sense? And discerning, like we said, what are the essentials for this season? And real quick, I know I'm going long with this because I could, again, keep talking about all this stuff, but really, again, is it aligned with, when you're figuring out your essentials, just the basics, is it aligned with your values? Is it connected to your goals, either personal, professional, or family? And then does it bring you joy? Is it something you actually want to do again, or going back to, or is it something you feel like you should be doing? So that's how you can kind of determine the essentials in this new season. So
Yeah, I love that so much. And I love bringing your family into it too. I know my husband and I have had a practice of like a Sunday night meeting for over a year now. And it does make such a difference just knowing. And when we don't do it, it's like the whole week is chaos without fail. And it's just like my meal planning routine, the same thing too. That's something that's just a routine for me now. And there's a very, very rare occasion that I don't do it, and everything feels off. And it's once you get into those habits, and then when you bring your family into it as well, I think that's so huge, especially when you have kids who are old enough. Like my 2-year-old's not going to understand the schedule, but my 6, almost 7-year-old, absolutely. She wants to know what is going on, and she wants a little bit of that consistency, and bringing her into it too, and asking her, like last year when we were going through kind of a crazy time, we told her we think we're doing too much, and she was like, yeah, I think so too. And so we asked her to pick her 2 favorite activities, because at the time she was doing 3 activities, plus school, and it was just a lot. And she, like, right off the bat was like, I don't need to do this thing anymore. And we were like, oh,
awesome.
Okay. And she's like, yeah, I don't really like it anyway. And we're like, oh, okay, maybe we should have done this
Good to
before,
know.
because we want her to be happy too. And they're part of the family too. And it was one less thing on our plate, and it made all
Yeah.
of us that much happier. So I think it's so
Yes,
important to bring our families into that too. So I love that you mentioned that as well.
totally.
Something that you mentioned before that I think is going to be a really hot topic for the mom listening is optimizing our energy. So, can you kind of explain, first of all, what this means and how moms can optimize their energy for their busy days and overall just their busy lives?
Yes, yes. Okay. So energy management is something that I feel like Simply Big Life has evolved into now. Like I said, like it started with the planner and it kind of went into like the intention and the values. And just recently, I am digging into this concept of managing our energy, optimizing our energy first before we even look at like managing our time or figuring out our time, because ultimately we could have all the blocks of time and the perfectly batched things that we're going to do and this great to-do list. If we show up to that block of time and we are exhausted and our head is full of clutter and all the stuff that we need to still do or we want to do, we are not going to have the energy to create anything, to do anything of value. So we have to optimize and manage our energy first. And ultimately, so I have dug into this and I'm still going to keep digging in and kind of figuring this out because I feel like it's an evolving, ongoing process. And it's, again, it's so individual and it's so unique to each of us because the things that energize us, the things that drain our energy, they're going to be different. And that's where all of this, again, I feel like everything I'm talking about comes back to you really do have to take this time to get to know yourself. You have to take the time to look inside and to stop long enough to figure out who you are and what works for you. So when we're talking about energy, it's in the definition of energy is the capacity to move. And ultimately, what I like to say is when I'm talking about personal energy management, it's our individual capacity to thrive on a daily basis. What is that for us, right? What are ultimately there's four energy sources too. There's physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. So when all of these things, and we've kind of already touched on all these things in the different ways, right? But when you really take a really in-depth look at each one individually and you're seeing, okay, ultimately at this time in this season, do I really need more physical energy? Do I need more sleep? Am I literally dragging through my days? Obviously, like you talk about with the nutrition and the movement and just taking care of our physical bodies. It's nothing about how we look. It's literally all about how energetic we are and how we can show up and keep moving and going through our day and get all the way through the day feeling great, not crashing at 3 p.m., not right. And it's just starts with that awareness of what is going on right now with my physical energy. And when we're talking about mental energy, right, that's the capacity to focus and to create. I mean, that's huge, obviously, when we're talking about with the business or even, but just being present and engaging with our family. If we're over here thinking about our to-do list, if we're over here trying to figure out what's for dinner, like because we haven't, right, just all the things, that's where automation comes in with eliminating decision fatigue with mental energy is huge. And then just the emotional energy. I mean, I think we can all, especially over these last few months of just really connecting to how connected we are, our capacity to feel and to understand our feelings and where they come from. And ultimately then spiritual, just that ability to connect to our values, to what's important, and just to the bigger picture. Like what's the bigger picture? What's our why in life? So ultimately, I mean, again, each one of these things and this and energy management can be a podcast in and of itself. But I think ultimately it's just really to think about how can we, everything we do throughout the day is going to spend energy, just no matter what. So how can we be intentional about where we're allowing our energy to go? Because scrolling through Facebook, social media, mindlessly watching Netflix, again, trying to figure out all these things, like not having the systems when it comes to all the things we do all the time and having to refigure it out every single day, that takes our energy and it makes it not available for our family, our creative pursuits, whatever that is. It really limits our energy for the things that are most important. And by the time we do all these things that really don't matter in the big picture, then we come over here and we're like, okay, now it's time to focus and it's time to be present. You have no energy left for the people and the things that matter most. So it's really increasing that awareness of, first of all, where's my energy going? And what are the things that drain my energy? What are the things that give me energy, give me life? I mean, for me, honestly, I'm figuring that out in the business and simply with my Simply Big Life. It is, I started my own podcast. And when I get off like this, like chats like this, talking about stuff like this, it energizes me. I'm like, I'm ready to go. And I know, so I'm kind of in that sweet spot. And I am more than willing to invest my energy into these things, right? But whether other things like maybe writing, isn't, I would rather speak, and that gives me energy. Writing seems to, drain my energy and make me, it takes too much mental energy that's precious for other things. So it's figuring out what that is for you, and then really right along with when you're creating your intention each day, really thinking about how am I going to be intentional with where I spend my energy?
Yes. Oh my gosh. You're talking about mindlessly scrolling social media and watching random things on Netflix. And I'm like, are you in my life? Are you
We
in
all
my
do it.
And I think a lot of people can relate to that as well.
Yeah.
But I do have to catch myself, because usually when I'm doing that, it's because I'm procrastinating doing something that is actually going to energize me, like going to bed. I typically don't do those things during the day. Typically during the day, I am focused, whether it's focused on the kids or, and I shouldn't say I am always, I am certainly not perfect, but I'm learning. But, I'm either focused on the kids, or I'm focused on my business, or hopefully I'm hanging out with my husband. But usually it's like at the end of the day where I'm just trying to get some rest time. And really what my body needs is sleep, but I'm over there scrolling Instagram or something like that. And I have to kind of snap myself back and go, this is not helping me tomorrow. This might be making me feel kind of relaxed now, but what does my body really need for tomorrow? So yes, I love that so much. And I love this whole concept of energy management. And I'm like, I feel like we could talk a whole other podcast episode.
Yeah, for sure.
And your podcast is awesome. And I can see like a series in your future with energy management on your podcast. I would love to listen to that, because it's so good. I love that. And I hope that the woman listening takes that advice and goes and really asks herself, what is draining me? What is energizing me? And I think it is so powerful to keep more of those things that energize us. Like for me, it's speaking as well. I love to talk. I love being on the podcast, whether it's, doing a solo episode or talking to other women. I love that so much. Whereas, there are other things that don't energize me. So, and I think everyone has that. There are going to be some things that might not energize us, but we have to do. So how can we, like the laundry? I don't love the laundry, but it has to be done. But how can we make room for that?
Exactly.
While still making room for those other things that, hey, when we're doing the things that energize us, then we have the energy to do those things that might not be that great, but are still necessary. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about marrying mindset with strategy when it comes to simplifying, which is really what you've been talking about the whole time. But you have this incredible resource, and I just shared about it recently on Instagram, and I will continue to share about it because I love it. And I am so grateful for you for creating it. And that is your A Simply Big Life planner that you've talked about a few times. So can you explained a little bit about why you created it, but can you maybe dig a little bit more into the process of creating it and how it works and how it helps women strategically make all of this stuff that we've been talking about happen in their lives?
Yes, yes. Oh my gosh. So it even, I mean, from the very beginning, I literally started, like I said, I started out sketching it on a blank, like a sketchbook. And I was just furiously like, okay, here's the month. What I could not find, I think the biggest difference, what I was looking for and I couldn't find, I wanted it all in one, first of all, because I had so many notebooks for different things,
Mm-hmm.
like a schedule and then like a dream book and then like my thoughts and and I was like, okay, I want it all in one place. Like, I think that can be done. I just need to figure out how. So the first version, so this is the current, the current one is the second edition
Mm-hmm.
of the planner. So the first version was last year and it was really, really big because I was like, I want to fit it all in. But ultimately and so the whole, I mean, just with the publishing, that again is a whole other story. But I feel like just a little tidbit, something even for like the entrepreneurs out there, I just jumped in. Like
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea what I was doing when it came to actually publishing a planner. I did have my coach for sure who helped me, and that was super huge and helpful. But I realize now, part of the, just what's really kept me going and with this business as a whole is that I'm okay with it not being perfect and
Mm-hmm.
learning as I go. So that's just something, like, probably from this whole experience of doing the planner, that really stands out. And that's what I continue to do because I really am passionate about this message of, and bringing this to women of, like, I really think we can have we can have everything we want in life, and that, but it's really getting clear on what that is because it's not all the things, and it's not necessarily maybe what we think.
Mm-hmm.
So I think having this as the resource for women to do all the things that we're talking about, like a one-stop shop to figure out what your values are, to do your goal setting, to think about your season and what are the systems that you need to create in this new season. Because right now, this current planner is mapped out each season, which I actually just did it this morning, is a seasonal reboot. So you're figuring out what, looking back at the last in 90-day increments, looking back at the last 90 days, again, the reflection and then setting your intention and your goals. So ultimately, how it's mapped out is it's the season, it's the monthly, then the weekly, then the daily. And that
Mm-hmm.
is what I could not find anywhere because, again, I feel like the way my brain works anyway, and that helps me to sort of organize my thoughts, is to get the big picture. What are my dreams? What are my goals? And for my goals, then break it down. Get the big picture, break it down, ultimately simplify.
Mm-hmm.
Simplify, simplify. And to get down to, eventually you get to your day and you're not overwhelmed by, like, your big goals. All you're focusing on each day is the little micro baby step that will get you eventually to your goals. But you don't
Mm-hmm.
even need to worry about that. You're just thinking about the one baby step. But how do you figure out what that baby step is? Is starting at the top and reverse engineering, basically, is kind of how I designed the planner. Um, and so ultimately, again, and I think infused in every the monthly refresh, the weekly refresh, and then the daily grounding page, infused in that is the mindset. And
Mm-hmm.
it's asking you at every turn in the planner to check in with yourself, to see how you're doing, what you're thinking, how you're feeling, how you want to feel, how you want to show up. There's gratitude, reflection, intention every single day. And then also, then it goes to, so that's like the mindset, and really matching that then with the strategy of, okay, so then what are your three most valuable tasks to
Mm-hmm.
match you up with your intention, right? And then go right next to it and block that off. Block off when you're going to do your most valuable task.
Mm-hmm.
Just literally moving through the page from left to right, my mindset, and then how I'm going to do it and when I'm going to do it. And
Mm-hmm.
just kind of really, because I do believe you need both, right? You need and I think doing that mindset work, that's ultimately managing your energy. That's what you're doing. You're figuring out where you're going to focus that day. So yeah, so it's been really fun. And this current planner is the nice thing is that it's it's not as big and bulky because I broke it into 2 volumes, because I still ultimately I'm still trying to figure out, I want it to be a one-stop shop. And I know obviously it's not going to be perfect or have everything for everybody, but as much as possible, all the things I'm talking about, and really just getting to the root of how can we figure out our essentials for our life. That's what I want women to get out of this planner.
Yeah. And I think they so are. I was with you too in having, I literally had 4 different planners before I just started switching over to yours, where I had one with like my daily gratitude and my kind of the morning practice that I was doing, getting in touch with my goals. And then I had one that was more of a bigger picture. And then I had my daily. So I'm totally with you. I love that it has everything, but it has the monthly spread and the weekly refresh, and it is just so great and everything all in one. And so I love it. So I'm sure, and you're giving my listeners a discount, right? So they can go ahead and they can get their own, which is awesome. And I think it's such a brilliant idea to have it all together, because just like when I talk about nutrition and when I talk about intuitive eating, mindset is such an important part of this. Yeah. And I truly believe that if you don't know what your core values are in your life, it's hard. We waver a lot in our health too, because we are just, going, exhausting ourselves, like we were talking about right at the very beginning, right? And we're not taking care of ourselves for that reason, right? So I think it all goes together, right?
Absolutely.
So I love it so much. So thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. This is so, so good. And I kind of just want to like launch it right now. And we have a couple of months before this is coming out. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be so good. So can you share anything new that you have coming up, or what's in the works for A Simply Big Life, and where my listeners can find you?
Yes. Well, thank you so much. Seriously, Kristin, this has been such an honor to be able to talk with you. And so this is actually my first interview.
Is it really? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And it's been a blast and basically a dream come true. So thank you so much. So okay, so yes, I've got the planner, the volume 2 planner. We will put that in the show notes with the discount. And then actually right around the time that this is going to be coming out, I am going to do another round of the Peace and Productivity group coaching program. So that's actually really good timing. Right now on my website, I have a wait list. So you can get on the wait list and, you'll get all the updates and everything. But that's really been a really fun thing, because ultimately it's kind of everything we've talked about and just walking women through this method, all the things, clarifying your values, getting your mind right, just thinking, getting down and dirty with what your limiting beliefs are, what's holding you back, figuring out your energy management, and then ultimately customizing systems for you. So I really enjoy, as much as I love the podcasting, but I also love just more one-on-one and being able to talk with women and walk them through the process. So that's the Peace and Productivity group coaching. And then, so I'm on Instagram, and my website is A Simply Big Life. And then I have a Facebook group, which is really fun, and that's A Simply Big Life too. So it ultimately, I go in there definitely once a week, if not posting more, just asking questions, going live. We're actually currently doing like a summer challenge, just little weekly habits and things like that. So that's another place you can find me too.
Awesome. Well, you would never know that this was your first interview. I mean, you are so, so great and so eloquent, and everything you shared was so, so valuable. So I am very grateful. So I know you've listened to my podcast before, so I have 3 final sort of rapid fire questions, but I always say you can take as long as you want. That I love to ask. So my first question is, what is your favorite thing to cook?
Okay. So I I would say I have a love-hate relationship with cooking. When I feel like I have to do it or have to do it often, then I'm just over it, which I think we can all relate to. But when I'm like, oh, I can take my time and I can like make it a creative thing, then I enjoy it. But I will say tacos, just regular like beef tacos. We finally found like a seasoning that I make that my son is like obsessed with. So anytime he smells tacos, he's like, yes, mommy, tacos. And it makes me feel good. So that's probably my favorite thing to cook because it's easy and I know they'll eat it.
Yes. Oh, we love tacos in our family. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So then when you don't feel like cooking, what is your favorite thing to order if you're going out to a restaurant? I guess when we're allowed to do that.
Yeah.
Or what is your favorite thing to have someone else cook for you?
Yeah. Hands down, grass-fed burger. Like huge, juicy. And I try not to be, I do get disappointed when they're not like a good burger, but I can kind of spot it on the menu now. And I'm like, I don't want to waste ordering my burger if it's not going to be like the good, the real deal. So, but yeah, I would say cheeseburgers are probably just my favorite food in general.
Oh my gosh, yes, they're so good. If you're ever out this way, we have an amazing burger place. It's so good.
Okay.
That's like our go-to date night is to
Yes.
get a burger from this place. And their fries are the best. They're so good.
I would love to explore your area. I actually haven't been up that way.
Well, come visit. You can come hang out.
Hey, that would be great.
We'll eat burgers.
Right?
Yes. So my last question is, what does your beautiful balance mean to you?
I love this. So, okay. So I think I've actually been kind of doing a lot of journaling and trying to figure out balance because I do like my non-work email is balancing Sarah. Like I've always, believed in balance, but I think what I'm coming to or kind of, my evolution of my thought process on that is just thinking it's not right. It's not so much just staying upright and just going. I think what most people think when they say, I don't believe in balance is that it's just this thing where you're like staying on the straight line and you're not ever, everything's 50-50. That I do not believe in. And we all know that that's not what we're talking about. That doesn't exist that way. So for me, my beautiful balance, it's that counterbalancing, and that's knowing when to push myself and when to let go. So knowing when to lean into something and then when to like lean the other way and like just kind of going, then it's like a flow and it's a harmony. So, but I love balance because I know what it means to me. Like it makes sense to me, right? So I love that. Beautiful balance.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so with you on that. I know. I think balance gets a bad rap these days.
Yeah.
People are like, balance isn't a thing. It's non-existent. And I'm like, no, I think it is. I think we just have our definition of balance wrong.
Exactly.
I think when we can define balance for ourselves, it's definitely something we can find. So,
yes.
So good. I think that's a great way to end, Sarah. That was so awesome. Thank you again so much for being on. I'm sure everyone's going to hop over and get themselves a planner and go see everything that you are doing. And again, I'm just so grateful for you being on. This was so much fun.
Thank you, Kristin. It was a blast. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Healthy Balance Mama podcast. If you loved it, would you take a screenshot and share it with a friend over on Instagram and tag me in it? It helps me so much to know what you love and are taking away from each episode. If you really loved it, would you hop over to iTunes and give me a star rating and review? Every rating and review helps this podcast be seen and heard by more women who need to hear the message of balance and wellness without deprivation. It's the best free gift you could give me. And as a reminder, the information and opinions on this podcast are meant for education and inspiration only and are not to be taken as medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Please consult with a trusted practitioner before making any changes. Have a beautiful day, friend, and I'll see you in the next episode.